several indigenous tribes in the Peruvian Amazon have literally blocked oil companies from doing business. It's pretty amazing. It was in The Intercept. It was written by Alexander Zaitchik, and this has been actually happening for a while. And what this, and the link is below, and you can read the details of it. I'll go into some of the highlights. But what this shows is how real resistance needs to happen. What these tribes have been going through is poisoned water, people vomiting blood, like all kinds of. These oil companies have just come in and just plundered and done whatever they want. And yeah, who cares? It's just indigenous people. Who cares? And so they just said, you know, here's the quote. This is not a symbolic action. Indigenous protesters occupy oil platforms and radicalize fight against pollution in the Amazon. They're like, this isn't just like we're holding signs. And no, they're like blocking. They're setting up. All these tribes are working together and they're blocking it. And it's pretty spectacular. It's kind of what you know, Hedges was talking about. I started watching his show that's on Telesur as well, and he interviewed. There's a great interview with several interviews with him and Abby Martin that are good, and then there's one with Chris Hedges and Cornel West, talking about what real resistance looks like. And while neither one of them are advocating violence, they're saying you gotta resist. You have to resist. I mean, there's a way to do it, and this is what's going on. So the takeover, I'll read the details here. The takeover of Lot 192, that's the area, lasted for 43 days. It was hardly the first protest to shut down the oil facilities studding the rainforests of Lorento, Peru's biggest region, and for decades the hub of its petroleum industry. Since 2006, the native people who live on the river basins where this oil is produced, a watershed of 5 major Amazon tributaries, the Pastaza, Tigre, Corrientes, Maranon, and Chambira, have executed at least a dozen similar uprisings. Some are just a few days, others stretch across seasons. Last autumn, indigenous communities launched a flotilla from the town of Caramulo that blocked traffic on the Maranon River, the main artery of Lot 92's sister block, Lot 8, for 4 months. The uprisings have all demanded the same redress. For nearly half a century, the state oil company, Peru, and its foreign partners have wreaked systematic contamination on the region, transforming daily life and poisoning the 5 rivers whose water fuse with the Ucayali River to become the Amazon just east of Lorenzo's capital. I can tell you, I haven't been to Peru, but I've been to the Amazon in Brazil. I've been to Manaus several times, which is the capital of the Amazonas. That's the state of the Amazon, and spent a lot of time in the Amazon. A friend had a bed and breakfast in Itacocharia, and I can tell you that the river is the light. It's commerce. It's obviously, I mean, fishing, trading. It's all there in the ecosystem of the Amazon, and this is such short-sighted, greedy corporate plundering. It's so stupid. It's cutting open the goose that laid the golden egg. You're damaging all of these ecosystems. You're damaging all of these economies, and you think that there's no long-term consequences to this. Like I'd like to sit all these oil company jackasses down and go, you know, if you keep ruining the earth, that you won't, there's no more, it's over, right? There's no more private jets in the Hamptons and the islands and the yachts. It's all done. It's all over, right? You get that? You think what? You're going to build a spaceship and fly and live in space or something? What do you think's going to happen? So I applaud these indigenous tribes for doing this. And if you look, there's a fairly decent map here that shows the 2 areas and where people were blocking this, and it's right on Peru, the Laredo province of Peru, and it borders Brazil. It's right on Brazil's western border. And to give you a little backstory of this area, after they struck oil in 1972, the Houston-based Occidental Petroleum and later its successor, the shadowy Dutch, Argentinian, Chinese company Pluspetrol proceeded to commit a series of sustained and extravagant environmental crimes. For decades, spills have gone untreated or covered with a thin layer of dirt. Ponds of floodplains have been filled with toxic waste. Corroded pipes, including the main northern Peru pipeline, have been neglected and led to rust out, leak, and explode into gushing spills. Then there is the generational scandal of the company's produced water. Until less than a decade ago, Pluspetrol, following the policy of its predecessor, Occidental, ignored the standard industry practice of re-injecting the carcinogenic fluids generated by oil wells known as produced water. Peru's Ministry of Environment estimates that companies dumped 1 million barrels a day directly into the rivers and forests of lots 8 and 192. This amounts to 3 billion barrels of toxic fluids flushed into the water tables and food chains of at least 40,000 people. And then, the water flows, so it goes downstream and affects more people. Pluspetrol agreed to stop dumping produced water in 2006 after Achua and Urania communities blockaded the Corrientes and occupied 180 of its wells, shutting down operations for 2 weeks. This is what you have to do. You have to hurt their bottom line one way or another. This is what they tried to do at Standing Rock. And Obama just said, we'll see how it plays out. And cops and Tiger Swan, private security, were on Army Corps land, that's federal land, shooting water cannons and rubber bullets at the water protesters and detaining people illegally. I did a video on Red Fawn Ellis is still in jail, illegally detained. Do an internet search of Free Red Fawn and you'll see information on her. This is just, staggering. But it shows this is what it's going to take. And I would suggest reading this entire out. It's a very lengthy article, goes into a lot of details, and it goes into, the author obviously spent time down there and interviews certain people and who live there. Here's one of the locals. I have 4 children. I want them to be educated and healthy. My nephew just tested positive for high levels of lead. I know how it happened. We were ignorant for a long time, but now I can tell you about the chemical composition of oil, toxicity, how the poison got into our blood. Now we know too much. That's part of it. We all got to get educated, because if we're going to trust the governments are all bought and paid for by the oil companies and all the big corporations. So the governments aren't going to help us. They're not going to give us, if the government says it's safe, I would still, it's not safe. They've had oil leaks on average of 4 a year since 1996 in the Dakotas and stuff like that. So this is what it's going to take. This is what real resistance, if you're looking for something to do with your life, I'd start resisting. I would organize and resist, because this is, it's happening everywhere, guys. It's happening everywhere. The Keystone pipeline leaked 5,000 barrels of oil last month here in the good old US of A. And then people in Nebraska still voted to let the pipeline come through Nebraska. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take. Everybody's nephew having lead poisoning, everybody vomiting blood, and then, whoa, maybe there's something we should do. What do you think oil is going to do? To all the Make America Greaters and the climate change deniers, what do you think? Go drink some oil. Go put it in your water supply if it's just a hippie scare tactic. And they are hoping that you don't pay attention. They're hoping that you don't get the information. They're hoping that you're too busy to protest and petition your lawmakers and stuff like that. They're hoping you don't have the time to do this. That's what they're hoping for. So crowdfund the money to go start resisting. That's what I would do. So thank you for watching the show and supporting it on Patreon and all the other places, and liking and subscribing. And this is what real resistance looks like. And I applaud everybody that participates.